We thought war was a duel. They brought a storm. My name is Shigetsune, retainer to the So clan, born and blooded on Tsushima Island. I have ridden its ridges in spring mist and drawn bow at its cliffs in typhoon winds. I have buried kin in soil salted by the sea. This morning, I watched war change. Tsushima is the outer gate of Japan, half a day's sail from Korea, a thin spine of forest and stone between the continent and Kyūshū. For centuries, we've held the first watch. Pirates, storms, traders, all pass here first. But today, something else passed through the fog. They call it the Yuan Empire. Mongol banners. Korean ships. Thousands, maybe 10,000. Maybe more. Chronicles will argue the numbers. Our people will remember one. We stood with perhaps 200 men, samurai and retainers from the island's holdings. That's not counting a shigarou or temple bowman. We did not count. We gathered. I watched from the ridge above Komoda Beach as the mist split and the sea beneath turned black, not with waves, but with sails. Square-rigged. Rowed by slaves, lashed to benches. A floating village, moving with purpose. Salt hung in the air, thick with tar and wet pinewood. Wind pushed westward from the strait. That favored us. But wind cannot stop drums. Their ships made sound before they made land. Low. Repeating. Not like our conch shell calls, but a rhythm without breath. Drums, whistles, banners with writing I could not read. I touched the charm sewn into the inside of my chest plate, 3 red stitches through white silk. My wife gave it to me the day our son was born. He is in Hakata, across the sea, under safer walls. At least, I pray so. We rode down from the ridge as one. Armor creaked wet from salt air. My horse stepped sure-footed on loose shale. The banner of So rose high behind me, blue field, white crest, fluttering slow. At the shore, we drew up. 200 men. Faces I knew from harvest festivals, border patrols, temple rites. Samurai, in the old sense, land-holding warriors bound by duty to serve our lords with loyalty and arms. We believed bushidō, the way of the warrior, meant standing firm, even when no one watched. We believed war began with names. We sent a herald. Young. Brave. Dismounted, walked to the shallows, called out for single combat, as is our custom. Honor meets honor, we say. Blade tests blade before battle begins. They answered not with a man. They answered with a volley. Arrows. Loud. Fast. Flat. He fell before he could finish speaking. I did not see who fired. I only heard the snap, like wood breaking underfoot, and saw the line of archers moving in perfect rhythm. No shouting. No pause. Just another volley, and another. One man beside me said, "They do not answer our names. They answer our formation." From the shore, small boats came. Covered men, shields like doors, spears braced in rows. Behind them, Korean infantry in layered armor, not unlike ours but broader, blockier. We moved to meet them. Horses into sand. The charge, always the answer when outnumbered. But before our hooves struck water, they lit something. A red flame. Then light. Then a sound like thunder rolling inside a bell. The first of their bombs. It did not kill. But it shattered. Nerves. Confidence. Air. Smoke and fire where we expected steel. They landed anyway. Not in disarray. In rows. Flag signaling forward, flank, kneel, loose. We fell back. Not far. But enough. I looked around and saw men I trained with, staring not at wounds, but at what they did not understand. The sea had brought them. The wind had carried their orders. But something colder was coming now. A different kind of war. We pulled back to the second ridge. Our horses lathered, our men silent. The enemy did not pursue, not yet. They formed at the beachhead, moving with a unity I had never seen. Shield bearers in front, archers behind, banners above. Every motion matched the drumbeats. We had trained to fight men. They had trained to fight formations. The page who held my stirrup could not have been more than 14. His name was Kenta, son of a blacksmith near Aso Bay. He had ridden beside me to carry water, messages. He had never seen fire fall from the sky. His hands shook. I gave him my water skin. Watch the standard, I said. When it falls, carry word north. He nodded, teeth clenched. I saw in his eyes the question he didn't ask, do you believe we can hold? No one answered that aloud. Our lines were formed in the narrow pass before the temple grove. Fewer than 200 now. Some were wounded. One horse had no rider. Armor buckled in places, helmets cracked. But no one turned away. From across the shallows, the Mongol drums began again. They pressed time, those drums, faster, denser. Not battle cries, but clocks. Warnings. Commands. Beat. Move. Loose. Advance. The sun was behind them now, lighting their sails in rows, black hulls like teeth across the bay. A volley came before we saw the men. Arrows, not loosed from emotion but from rhythm. Their composite bows, made of layered horn, sinew, and wood, curved like nothing in our armories. Compact, but terrible even in damp air. Each arrow landed flat, piercing not gaps, but shields, joints, eyes. I raised mine to parry a shaft aimed at Kenta. It grazed my forearm. No blood, just sting. Stay behind me, I said. He didn't argue. We tried to counter. A charge on foot, through pine and stone, uphill from our own side. A foolish angle. But no time remained. Our front lines moved first, Yasuhide, spear in hand, teeth bared. Then Kanzo, swinging his naginata like a farmer threshing grain. No calls. No shouts. Just the sound of men choosing action over fear. The clash came like a gate slamming shut. We struck their front, but they didn't collapse. They absorbed us. Arrows from behind their ranks fired over their own men. Their infantry didn't duel. They pushed. Blocked. Fell in layers and rose again. We aim for the man, my father once told me. They aim for the line. Now I understood. One of our captains fell. Another called for retreat. I did not give the order. We pulled back by instinct, step by step, breath by breath, into the grove of Jizo, where stone statues stood among moss and roots. A small creek ran through it, its waters cold even in high summer. There, the trees blunted their arrows. There, we stood. Kenta passed me another arrow. I notched, fired, missed. We had no time to mourn. We had only the moment in front of us. The beach behind us burned. The temple bell rang once, then stopped. I smelled ash, wet lacquer, and pine. A new sound rose, a whistle, high and thin, followed by a deeper crash. Another thunder crash bomb. This one landed behind our lines, in the rocks near the Old Watch Shrine. Light. Smoke. Heat. Confusion. Our line faltered. The shrine wall collapsed. A boy screamed. Then silence. Not death, silence from shock. I found myself kneeling beside Kenta. My horse had vanished. My sword was nicked. And my hand was on the charm again, 3 red stitches in white. In that moment, all I could hear was the drumbeat, still steady, calling them forward. We were not broken. But we were no longer fighting the war we thought we knew. We fell back through the stone gate of Shifukuji Temple, the grove thick with cedar and smoke. Some among us wanted to retreat farther inland. Others wanted to die where they stood. I looked at Kenta, his hands blistered from hauling arrows, and I thought of my own son, across the sea in Hakata. So I chose something else. Here, I said, pointing to the narrow creek crossing just west of the temple bell. We hold here. The creek was shallow but slick with moss. On either side, embankments rose like folded arms, no wider than 5 men across. A natural choke. A place where many could not fight at once. We moved fast. A Shigeru stripped branches, sharpened them into stakes. I ordered 2 men to cut a fallen beam into a makeshift barricade. The rest dug in behind statues of Jizo, the guardian of travelers, whose stone eyes watched with patience even now. The Mongols advanced with caution. They had seen us bleed, but not break. And we had learned. This time, we dismounted, swords and spears braced for footwork, not bravado. We tucked our banners away. We blended into trees, into shrine walls, into the shape of the land itself. Samurai do not only fight in open duels. We protect. We endure. The first enemy wave came with shield bearers, again in rows. But the slope slowed them. And for once, we struck first, stones rolled from above, arrows loosed from cover, spears stabbing between shrine posts. 2 fell. Then 4. A third reached the creek and slipped on moss. Kenta shouted and pushed a rock down from the slope. It struck hard. The boy blinked, shocked at what he had done. I clapped his shoulder. That's one, I said. Then the second wave came, archers and grenadiers. Another bomb exploded against the gate. Shifukuji's lanterns tipped into the dirt. Flames licked the roof. The air turned metallic, ash and smoke and burning rope. Still, we held. Night crept in, gray and thick. Rain threatened, but didn't fall. Our torches guttered in wind, and shadows flickered against Buddha's carved smile. By midnight, their attacks slowed. Perhaps they regrouped. Perhaps they thought we were done. We were not. That was the night we countered. I took 20 men in Kenta. We circled through the orchard trail behind the temple, down toward their campfires near the beach. The rain began then, light but cold. A gift. We moved in silence. Our sandals slick. Our breath held. Then we struck, not at their men, but at their signal drums and banners. We cut ropes. Kicked down stands. Threw torches into carts. A flash of alarm whistles and torchlight. Shouts in a language I didn't know, but fear sounds the same in any tongue. We vanished back into the trees, half of us bloodied, 1 man missing. But they did not pursue. They had learned something, too. That even an island of stone can claw at the tide. We returned to the grove before sunrise. Exhausted. Soaked. But alive. Shifukuji still stood, half-burned, but watching. In the quiet before light, I sat beneath the Jizo statue and unwrapped my charm. 3 stitches. A thumbprint of salt. And I whispered to the earth, we are not yet gone. Morning brought no sunrise, only mist and smoke, hovering low like a held breath. The air tasted of burnt cedar and wet ash. Shifukuji's rafters smoldered behind us. The drums, once rhythmic, were now sporadic, probing, not commanding. We had held the night. But I knew it wouldn't last. We counted our force. 73 men. That included temple monks who had taken up bows, a wounded messenger with a cracked shin, and Kenta, still too young to shave, now covered in soot and cuts he hadn't noticed yet. We could not hold another full attack. I climbed the ridge behind the grove to look. From there, I saw the Mongol camp rebuild. Supply barges still moored offshore. Tents in clean rows. New banners raised, untouched by our fire. Then, a kite, black and yellow, lifted into the wind. It circled, dipped, rose again. A signal. Moments later, ships began to shift. Lines of men boarded smaller boats. Others moved to the tree line, not toward us, but around. They were moving inland. Toward the villages. I descended fast. In the temple court, the men looked up. I didn't wait for question. They're not here to fight us, I said. They're here to take the island. That changed everything. There was no longer a battle line. Now there was only time to buy. We could not stop them from landing. But we could slow them, harry their scouts, force caution, draw their eyes to one ridge while farmers fled through another. I ordered the standard lowered. One man protested. Our ancestors. Our ancestors are not here, I said. But the children of Tsushima are. I turned to Kenta. You'll lead the civilians inland. Take the cliff trail east. Ride if you can, run if you must. Take this. I handed him the charm, my family talisman, salt-worn, soft at the edges. Give it to the temple at Hakata. Say what you saw. His lip trembled. But you. I've seen my years, I said. You haven't. He did not bow. He embraced me. His armor clinked against mine like soft rain. Then he was gone, with 10 others, guiding villagers through the trees while the rest of us prepared to draw the Mongol gaze. We chose the ridge north of the creek. Bare, open, exposed. We lit torches in a circle, raised old flags on bamboo poles. We struck gongs from the temple ruins to signal strength we didn't have. And we waited. The Mongols came by noon. Not all. Just enough to test. They advanced carefully, drums thudding, infantry spread wide, archers scanning trees. They saw what we wanted them to see. We fired first. They responded in waves. Another bomb burst behind our lines. Rocks split. Bark scorched. We gave ground, then held again. Every moment we held, the eastern trail grew farther from danger. That night, our camp was a line of embers on a ridge that could not survive another morning. I slept an hour. Maybe less. I dreamed of my son, for the first time in weeks. He stood by the sea, holding the charm, looking back not with fear, but with understanding. The final dawn over Tsushima broke like a knife through smoke. I stood at the ridge edge, my breath shallow. What little remained of our force, perhaps 40 men, lined the slope. Faces black with ash. Eyes hollow but clear. We heard the drums before we saw them. Not the erratic pattern of scouting. These were heavy, relentless, march rhythms meant to crush resolve. From the beach below, lines of infantry began their climb. Mongol, Korean, and conscripted fighters from distant shores. Some carried ladders. Others, shield walls. Above, gulls circled and screamed. I turned to the men and gave no speech. Only the signal, 2 raised fingers, then a closed fist. They nodded. We would draw them here, one last time. Let them think this was our final sanctuary, while Kenta and the others vanished into the forest spine. The trap, such as it was simple, appear to break, then pull them into the bottleneck. Delay them on unfavorable ground. We lit brush fires behind us, fed smoke into the trees. Shouted fake orders. Beat drums of our own, borrowed from the ruined temple. They came fast, convinced we were scattering. Then we struck, with everything left. From above the ridge, stones and arrows fell. Spears stabbed down through gaps in their shields. 2 fell. Then 5. Then they adapted. Arrows whistled back. A man beside me screamed, not from pain, but from fury. He'd thrown his last arrow, used his bow like a club. I held the line. Until the banner fell. It was old, the crest of so, worn from years of sea wind. When the pole split and the cloth sagged, I saw 3 men hesitate. Their eyes turned to me. And I turned away. I chose the boy. Kenta had not returned. That meant he was still running. Still alive. I ran from the line, grabbing the nearest horse, one too green for battle, but fast. I kicked hard and rode down the slope, away from the crest, toward the sound of shattered brush. Through smoke, I spotted a Mongol scout detaching from the flank. Heading toward the eastern trail. Toward the refugees. I leaned low, tucked my blade. The horse screamed once, then galloped. I struck the scout from behind, not to kill, but to turn him, to signal his comrades. It worked. They followed me. Not the trail. Not the villagers. I led them south, toward the sharp cliffs that fall into the inland sea. Toward a bend in the coast where the rock crumbles under weight. The horse couldn't go further. I dismounted and walked. When they caught me, I did not lift my sword. I had dropped it halfway up the path. They circled but didn't strike. They saw no banner. No threat. Just a man alone, watching the tide go out. That was enough. I was not killed. Not then. I was left. Because sometimes, being forgotten is the last duty. From the ridge behind, I heard no more drums. Only wind. And gulls. I woke in silence. Ash clung to my face, damp with morning dew. The sky above Tsushima was pale gold, the kind of color that promises peace but delivers news. There were no drums now. No fire. Just emptiness, and the feeling of something immense having passed through. The Mongols had moved on. I was not bound. Not taken. Perhaps they saw no threat in an aging samurai with torn armor and no sword. Or perhaps they left me for the crows. I stood slowly. The slope was quiet. The trees scarred. The smoke from Shifukuji had thinned into a gray ribbon that wound across the ridge and disappeared over the sea. I began to walk. No destination, just one foot, then another. Through cedar groves, across shattered trails, past shrines where stone Jizo statues still stood watch. And then, in a hollow beneath a fallen pine, I found Kenta's horse. Alive. Riderless. My chest tightened. But then I saw the marks, boot prints. Small, hurried. Leading east. He had gone on foot, through the pass, toward the coast, toward Hakata. Some had made it. That thought steadied me. By afternoon, I reached the last overlook before the eastern cliffs, where the trail descended toward the old ferry port. Below, the sea glittered blue. The Mongol fleet remained, but many ships were gone, pushing south toward Iki and Kyūshū. They had not stayed to occupy Tsushima. They had burned what they could, taken what they needed, and left the rest. But they had been seen. And that mattered more than the hill we'd lost. 2 riders came up the trail behind me. Japanese, one limping, the other with a bandaged arm. Survivors from a northern hamlet. They carried no weapons. Just a sealed scroll, wrapped in oilcloth and stamped with the broken crest of a village shrine. Heading for Dazaifu, one said, voice hoarse. You. I nodded. We rode together. Down through narrow forest roads, into ravines slick with moss, across suspension bridges rebuilt with rope and prayer. The inland paths had not yet been touched by the invaders. But the villages had heard. In one, a grandmother gave us dried persimmons and water. In another, children watched from temple steps, silent, eyes too wide for their age. We told no tales. But the message rode with us, louder than any drum. They are coming. And they do not fight like us. At night, I sat beneath the trees and looked west. My sword was gone. My armor cracked. But the charm, my wife's stitches, was still tucked beneath my robe. Kenta had carried its twin. By the third day, we reached the outer villages of Hakata. A bell rang once. Then twice. Guards raised pikes, couriers galloped ahead. A conch shell called inland to the garrisons. And in the harbor below, ships stood ready, waiting not for tribute, but for war. The warning had arrived. And in it, Tsushima stood, not in strength, but in sacrifice. We reached Dazaifu at sundown. The old administrative capital of Kyūshū, nestled inland from the bay at Hakata, was not built for war, but it remembered how. Stone walls, narrow gates, high watch platforms. Monks and merchants walked in silence, watching the road as though it might breathe fire. News had already arrived, through ash-smudged riders and torn flags. But not like ours. We entered under escort, our horses dripping with salt and sweat. I wore no helmet. My armor still bore the burns from the temple grove. And I carried no sword, only the family charm, its stitches dull but unbroken. Inside the Hall of Records, the governor did not ask my rank. He asked only, "Did you see their eyes?" I nodded. "They do not see us," I said. "Only the next hill." He did not speak again for a while. I gave my report simply, no heroics, no inflated numbers. They landed in force. Mongols and Koreans. They used drums, bombs, shields and ranks. Arrows by volley. Ships like a moving city. One scribe wrote furiously. They did not seek glory. They sought ground. I showed them the rough map I had traced on birch bark, landing points, burns, destroyed shrines. I circled the creek where we made our stand. I marked the trail where Kenta's group had fled inland. We couldn't stop them, I said. But we slowed them. That's what we had. No one criticized our loss. Because already, walls were rising. Along the Hakata coast, samurai and stonemasons worked in shifts. New earthworks were being built. Stockades, signal towers, watch garrisons. Merchants donated lumber. Fishermen carried stones. Women sharpened arrowheads beside monks. And the lords came. From Higo, Chikuzan, Bungo, names I had only known through paper now stood in armor, swords clean, eyes narrowed. They did not laugh at the tales of bombs or gunpowder pots. They ordered tests. 1 week later, I stood beside a line of archers as they fired against woven shields of soaked straw. The Mongol arrows we had recovered punched through. Our own bounced. That changed orders. By month's end, barriers had been reinforced, horses reallocated, bows rebuilt, scouts sent to Iki and beyond. What we had lost in time, we had gained in clarity. I remained in Dazaifu through winter. Not as a soldier, but as a voice. I taught pages the sound of Mongol signals. I marked sea routes on maps. I repeated the drum patterns in the dust, so they would not feel foreign when they came again. Because they would come again. We did not know when. But the sky had cracked once. And the wind had changed. Japan had seen the face of empire, and it would not forget. At night, I still walked alone. Down to the harbor, past walls that had not been there months before. I would stand at the edge and listen, not for drums this time, but for the sound of readiness. There was no glory in Tsushima. But there was warning. And that was what mattered most. In war, the first to fall rarely write the story. But we did. By spring, the word Tsushima meant something new. Not just a speck on the map, not just the outer island, but a threshold, and a warning passed from soldier to soldier. I was summoned to Hakazaki Shrine, where ministers gathered between strategy sessions. It was strange, me, a retainer from the burned edge of the empire, seated near scrolls and counselors. But they listened. I told them how we formed a line not to win, but to buy a breath. How bombs shattered confidence more than bone. How drums became clocks, and arrows came not at men, but at formations. I told them about the grove, the creek, the charm, and the boy who carried it forward. They asked, what do we prepare for next? And I answered plainly, not a duel. A storm. They nodded. And began building a harbor wall. The defense of Hakata became more than dirt and wood. It became strategy. Engineers from Kyoto laid stone foundations. Armories stocked extra powder. For the first time, naval scouts were dispatched proactively, not just to chase pirates, but to watch for shadows on the horizon. I saw old friends arrive from as far as Io and Bitchu, answering the call, not to reclaim Tsushima, but to learn from it. That was our gift. Even in loss, we had left them something. In the months that followed, I met Kenta again. He had reached Hakata safely. A monk had given him shelter, a shipwright had offered work. When I saw him, he held a spear like it was part of his arm. He returned the charm. I kept it dry, he said. I took it in my hands. The thread was faded, but still whole. So I stitched it into new armor. Not mine. His. Wear it, I told him. When they return, you'll be ready. He did not argue. Neither of us spoke about the men we had left behind. But we both remembered the banner, fallen in smoke. The temple grove, lit by bombs. The line, drawn not for glory, but for duty beyond hope. I had once believed that bushidō, the way of the warrior, meant standing tall, sword raised, unbending. Now I understood. Sometimes, it means adapting. Sometimes, it means letting go of the sword and lifting the message instead. Let them call Tsushima a loss. They will. But know this. Every inch of their victory came with a cost. And every moment we bought another day for Japan to rise. The world had changed. But so had we. The Mongols did not return that year. Nor the next. But every morning, the watchtowers at Hakata scanned the sea. Tsushima remained scarred. Its villages rebuilt slowly. The So clan reorganized what it could, though some lands were left to forest. I visited once, walked the ridge above Komoda Beach, where the black hulls had first appeared. The wind off the Korea Strait still carried salt and silence. The stone Jizo at Shifukuji stood, chipped but upright. Someone had placed a red cloth around its neck, fresh. Perhaps a farmer. Perhaps another survivor. The shrine bell was gone, but the sound of memory still echoed. I knelt there and placed a second charm, this one stitched by my son. We do not choose when the wind shifts. But we choose what we anchor to. Back in Hakata, training had changed. Young warriors learned more than sword and horse. They studied naval signals, formation maneuvers, coastal strategy. Men spoke less of duels, more of defense as endurance. Composite bows, copied from recovered enemy weapons, were tested in damp fields. Shield units began to form. Bomb drills, yes, even those, became part of the regimen. The war had ended. But the learning had just begun. I trained Kenta myself. Not for vengeance. But for clarity. I taught him the rhythm of the Mongol drums, how they compress time. How to read them, anticipate shifts in command. He memorized them like verses. I watched him grow into armor that once belonged to his father. One night, he asked me, if they come again, will we survive? I looked at the charm sewn into his sleeve. The same 3 stitches. A new thread. We won't stop them all, I said. But we'll stop them better. That, I've come to believe, is the quiet strength of Japan. Not the shout, but the stance. Not the wall, but the will behind it. We may be an island, but we are not isolated. Every storm teaches. And we remember the first break in the sky. We remember Tsushima. We remember the names, not because they won, but because they stood. When the wind shifts again, and it will find us no longer waiting. It will find us ready. The waves roll in without memory. But we remember. On Tsushima's eastern shore, just past the rebuilt harbor, stands a stone marker. No statue. No names. Just a smooth slab carved with 3 characters. First to stand. I visit it each year, as the tide turns warm. Kenta joins me sometimes. Now a man, his armor polished, his bearing calm. We walk the beach in silence, picking up driftwood, sometimes prayer tags washed down from inland shrines. He wears the charm openly now, stitched to his shoulder, a threadbare piece of silk holding 3 red marks. The same I once wore. The same he once carried. The same he will one day pass on. We do not talk much of that morning in 1274. But when we do, we speak not of numbers, whether it was 200 or more, or whether 10,000 Mongols truly made land. The numbers are a symbol. What matters is this. We saw what came first. And we chose to meet it. I tell him, as I've told the scribes, the soldiers, the children who listen under the map trees of Dazaifu. That war taught us something we had not faced before, not just overwhelming force, but the disappearance of the duel. We were samurai, trained in personal valor, bound by bushidō, the way of honor and duty. But the world changed that day. And we did not vanish. We learned. That's honor too. Honor isn't refusing to change. It's what you carry while the world changes. The Mongols would return in 1281. With more ships. More fire. Another storm. But this time, the walls at Hakata were ready. The archers knew the signal kites. The scouts recognized the rhythm of foreign drums. And when the wind turned, so did the tide. But that's another story. For now, I stand by the sea. The breeze lifts. The sun breaks over the strait. And the charm stitched to my son's armor flickers in the light. We are no longer afraid. We are only watching. Just as we were the first. If you enjoy this type of content and would like to see more of it and support the channel, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications.